is our zone is 6.2 acres and 13 miles in length, so we fit within the criteria for the zone. Currently, there's 10 enterprise zones that are up for renewal, and ours is one of them. There are 7 enterprise zones that are all or partially in Lane County. We have the Cottage Grove, Crestwell, and South Lane. We have Florence, standalone. We have Junction City and Harrisburg combined. We have Oak Ridge and Westburg. Springfield standalone. Veneta standalone. And we have West Eugene. And Lane County is a co-applicant on 3 of them. So it kind of covers the criteria. So really the criteria is to apply for an enterprise zone with the state is meeting the median income and then meeting the criteria for the zone size and location. So for us, our enterprise zone is coming due. It expires on June 30th of 2023 this year. So we need to reapply for renewal or redesignation, they call it. I need to have an application, I believe, in by June 15th of 2023. So they can process it and approve it. And then it would go in effect July 1st of 2023, and it would be approved for 10 years from that point. The process for redesignation is the first step is to hold a informative meeting and invite all the taxing districts in the district or in the proposed zone to the meeting. I held that meeting on February 22nd here in the council chambers at 10 a.m. We have 13 taxing districts in the current zone. 2 of them overlap. Lane County has 2 and Crestwell has 2 roles. Lane County is their public safety district and also Lane County government in general. Crestwell has Crestwell government in general and also their urban renewal zone that they have. So they have kind of doubled up so that there's 11 entities that in total that are separate. At that meeting, we went through explaining the enterprise zone, its function, its potential impacts, a little history about it, which I'll cover a little later, and then answered any questions. We had the only individual taxing district that showed up was Crestwell. So that the informative meeting's been taken care of. The second step is that each governing jurisdiction that are partners in the enterprise zone has to pass a resolution of support for the enterprise zone or an order in Lane County's instance. So tonight in our regular council meeting, there'll be a resolution to support the redesignation from the city Cottage Grove. Next Tuesday, I will go before the Lane County Board of Commissioners and seeking their support, and they use an order for their function of approval. And then on, I believe, April 10th, I'll be at the City of Crestwell's City Council meeting in trying to get their resolution of support approved. So once those 3 bodies pass the resolution of support, I can submit the application to Business Oregon once it's completed. So once approved by by Business Oregon, they need to, the entities need to essentially declare who's going to be the zone manager. Cottage Grove has been provided the zone manager, and that once I became Public Works and Development Director, that was a responsibility that I took on. So I've been the zone manager for the last 6 years. Before that, I believe it was Mr. Cheshire. So For businesses and entities, so we have a website or a web presence, talks about enterprise zones, so it talks about the various different enterprise zones. There's an application that businesses need to fill out, and then there's the guiding principles on the enterprise zone. So that's all kind of a packet of information. If there was a business in this zone that wanted to apply, I would direct them to get that information. They're fillable forms, fill it out, and then they submit it to me. The criteria to apply is that for businesses that are applying for it, let's say you're an existing business, I mentioned this a little earlier this evening, so let's say Weyerhaeuser wanted to apply for the enterprise zone and they have 400 employees. They would, to qualify for property tax exemption on the new investment that they're making, they would have to increase their employment by 10%, which would be 40 employees. Now, if you were a brand new business and you were coming into this zone and you hadn't been established, the requirement would be 10% of your employment. So if you hired one person, you would qualify. PacTech, for example, PacTech is a recipient of the enterprise zone exemption. They moved here into Cottage Grove, a brand, purchased a facility, made the investments. What qualified for exemption for PacTech was any new investment. So the property that was already on the tax rolls didn't receive any exemption. It's the new investment. And for PacTech, they receive money for rehabbing the building, making it, remodeling it to meet their needs. That qualified. Then the support personal property, like their presses and various different things, forklifts type things, qualify for the exemption. Because they were brand new, their entire employment, they originally started out, I believe, with 35 jobs that they were going to create. And since then, they've actually employed close to 100 employees at PacTech through what they've done. And they've actually taken advantage of the enterprise zone for 2 approvals of property tax exemption. The one criteria that has to be watched is because they already operate a facility in Lane County, you can't displace employees from a certain distance away into, so like Eugene, they couldn't take employees, reduce the employment there and count them as new employees here in Cottage Grove. That wouldn't work. So they had to be brand new employees to the entire PacTech organization to qualify and meet that criteria for the employment. So essentially, companies come in, they fill out the application. I work with Lane County to determine whether or not the application criteria is been met. An additional item that has to be included in the application is that you have to have an agreement with WorkSource. WorkSource is an employment agency. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're bound to go to WorkSource for your new employees, but you have to have an agreement that you have a resource to help you hire these new employees as you ramp up. If the application is complete and they have the agreement, then I send it off with Lane County to Business Oregon, and they verify that, yes, that application is complete and can move forward. So businesses that are eligible for the enterprise zone exemption, property tax exemption, are manufacturers, processors, shippers, a variety of operations that serve other organizations, call centers, headquarter type facilities. In our enterprise zone, there's a declaration to request that you want it to also apply to hotel, motel, and resorts. So our enterprise zone has that item listed in it. There isn't very many actual enterprise zones that give exemptions to those, but it made sense for Cottage Grove because we are a destination for whether it's recreation on a trail or the lakes or that. So that was included in the original enterprise zone application and kept on. What doesn't qualify for enterprise zone credits would be tourism, retail food service, entertainment, childcare, financial services, property management, housing or construction, retail sales, healthcare. Those are items that aren't included or eligible. And what qualifies for the exemption, as I stated earlier, it has to be new investments in the property. So what already exists on the property tax rolls is not eligible for the exemption. It has to be a new investment in the property. And it could be building, could be equipment, could be additional land that you purchase. Typically, the enterprise zone is good for, once your application has been approved, it's good for 3 years, but it doesn't start until you actually start operating. So let's say that a company wanted to locate in our zone, and they got to go through building a facility and getting it equipped with the equipment. Once they start actually manufacturing and operating, then the exemption kicks in. They're not paying additional property taxes on during that period of time anyway, because it hasn't been finalized in a building permit, and therefore it doesn't kick in until the property tax would actually be engaged or approved by Lane County as they assess it. Our enterprise zone is generally all companies would qualify for the 3-year. There is a possibility that somebody could apply for a 5-year exemption for 2 additional years, but they have to meet some large increased employment costs that incurred. And generally, what my experience being around enterprise zones is that really just applies to people like semiconductors, large companies. They have to average a certain amount of pay over their entire payroll, and it's considerably higher than the median income or the average income. If I remember rightly, for Hynix, when Hynix was approved for the enterprise zone, to get the additional 2 years, they had to average $70,000 with a salary. For small businesses in the zone, that's really difficult for them to meet that requirement. If a company, hypothetically, they operate and they're in this in 2 years, and then the business fails and they go out of business, they are responsible for paying back the enterprise credit that they received. So they have to continue maintaining to fully perfect this enterprise zone exemption. They have to maintain that employment throughout those 3 years that they were approved for. The zone manager in Lane County, we're responsible to review the filings each year to make sure that they met their employment requirements. And then Lane County processes the assessments for each year and sends that on to Business Oregon for their final review and approval. The state does allow for enterprise zones to collect a processing fee, but since the establishment of the South Lane Cottage Grove Crestwell enterprise zone, there's never been a fee charged to companies for processing an application. My understanding, there is zones. We worked with a company here that has a facility in Goose Bay, and then established Oregon Seafoods, who established a food processing plant here recently in this zone. He was surprised to hear we didn't charge any fee. He was very appreciative of it, though. So I mentioned a point. So a little bit about our enterprise zone. During the 2012-2022 10-year period, there was $814,000 worth of property tax that was exempted. Cottage Grove's enterprise zone value was $763,894. So the bulk of the exemption was within the city of Cottage Grove. There was 50,106 exempted in the South Lane portion of the zone. That is the Saginaw area. We have one company, Witzel, that manufacturing that receives that exemption. And then in Cresswell, there has never been an approved application. And we haven't received one, so there's been no enterprise zone exemption in Cresswell. The total number of jobs that have been created over that 10-year period was 108 new jobs. And this year, coming on into the tax rolls for the districts that are impacted. So in the districts for Cottage Grove, there's $115,000 worth of new property tax coming onto the tax rolls that will be divided up proportionately according to the property tax calculations for the city, Cottage Grove, the school district, the fire district, are I believe the three entities that receive the tax here. The companies that received approved applications in that 10-year period were PacTech, Witzel Manufacturing, King Estate, Iris Vineyard, and Side Pocket Foods. There was a new application that was applied for in 2021 by Oregon Seafood. They're still in the process of getting up and running and expect to have that property tax exemption kick in for the next tax season. I've had potential for the Cottage Grove Enterprise Zone. There's conversations that have been made with Synergy Air. They would take advantage of applying at the point that they're moving forward. And it was also mentioned to the Village Green that we do have, and the owners of the Village Green, that we do have enterprise that would apply to any type of investment, new investment into the old Village Green Motel. Wanted to share too that the legislature is currently hearing a bill to extend the enterprise zone statute. There's multiple, and talking with Councilor Fleck before the meeting, there's actually more than what I was able to find that are out there swirling in the legislature. But LOC extended information on the House Bill 2199. It's a really pretty basic bill that extends the enterprise zone to 2035. In the Senate, there's Senate Bill 134. It, once again, is a standalone, just a time extension, extending the statute to 2032. And then there's some Senate Bill 135, which would extend the long-term enterprise zone for rural. It would give an extension to that. And then there's Senate Bill 139, which is the rural renewable energy development zone. So there's bills working to extend the various different enterprise zone statutes that are out there. I would share that there's an interesting, I'm sure each of you received the LOC update on a weekly basis. If you click on the enterprise zone tab there, they give you an update. In this week's update, there was an opinion article printed in the Oregonian that it's encouraging reauthorizing the enterprise zone to boost jobs and grow community wealth. It's a joint article by Mayor McGriff from Oregon City and Mayor Beebe from Prineville. Goes in and talks about a lot of the benefits and what the state has seen, and the reports that share that enterprise zones are very, very positive and work well for increasing employment. I would say that since I've been here in the 6 years, I've had a couple conversations in Cresswell trying to support businesses that haven't moved forward with projects. And here in Cottage Grove, probably had a half a dozen conversations with businesses trying to, support them if they decide to come in. I can't say whether or not that they would not locate without the enterprise zone, but in PacTech's, for an instance, PacTech, when they add a new press to their facility, it's a multi-million-dollar cost. And, if they can get an exemption to help them get that piece of equipment up, get it operating, generating the revenue, that $115,000 that's exempt for that piece of equipment helps them get to yes on investing in our community. And they have honored jobs in our community, and those are important for us to have, especially as this enterprise zone was really established to help rural entities in the 80s and 90s as they transitioned from a very strong timber industry presence into something new. And it's been supportive in trying to get new industry into these communities and creating employment for those citizens that may have lost their jobs. So I'm open for questions and comments.
Councilor Erman.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. When you mentioned that this came about in the 70s and 80s, makes sense because looking at the trade-off, you trade off a little bit of or a percentage of assessable taxes for the district for, as I'm understanding it, a rise in employment and potentially capital investment of infrastructure. Are those kind of the two main things that we're buying with foregoing taxes? Is that the kind of impetus behind it, or is there more than that?
So Councillor, yeah, the employment is one key piece, but when you say investment in infrastructure, can you share?
Yeah, like buildings get built.
Okay, so you're talking about their investment in their business.
Which benefits for future use.
Yeah, so the legislature recognized that there's a huge amount of money for somebody to be a startup, new company, and sometimes the challenges of coming up with all that resources is a challenge. So this was a way to help them reduce that burden. Yes.
So times are changing again. I'm thinking about, the advent of just the remote working environment. And I wasn't seeing any specific criteria about where the employees have to reside. And so I'm wondering, I was just wargaming my own situation. It's like, what should, maybe I apply for an enterprise zone exemption. I have no overhead. I have no building. I have an internet connection and, expertise, and I have employees across the United States. And it could fall under, one of the allowables. And I thought, well, that's not really the point of this, right? So because if we're wanting to employ people here in Cottage Grove, I don't see any criteria for that. And so and I know this, I'm guessing the city isn't the one adding criteria to this. This is run by Business Oregon, right? It's just set up at that level.
Yeah, that's correct. So this is state statute, and we just follow the statute. So in your hypothetical, you wouldn't receive a property tax break. Your investment has to be in the zone, and it has to be a qualifying investment. So essentially, it doesn't sound like what you explained to me. There would be any property tax liability in where you're located because you don't have a parent place, building, whatever. So
I would just sell my home to my business.
Yeah, but it's not going to qualify as an item in this. You'd have to kind of I don't think that would.
That's the question. Where in the criteria would something like that be prevented?
Well, it's basically in the property tax portion of it. So you would have to apply for it, and you'd have to give me a little bit more information as to what you would be valued as property tax by the Lane County assessor. But the Lane County assessor is going to be the person that says, yeah, okay, in this instance, you're manufacturing a widget and you're investing in a $10 million building and you're bringing in hypothetically $5 million worth of equipment. So you got a $15 million investment that we're putting on the tax rolls, and you're producing a product that is allowable under this, and therefore you would get property tax exemption. So
we're talking about physical widget production. So a variety of operations that serve other organizations. I noticed professional services were in the list of prohibited on the application, but I didn't see that on the ineligibles and the rest. So we're really, the criteria is really buildings, tangible infrastructure, employees in Cottage Grove.
Right. And during our agenda session on Friday, Councilor Meriday brought up e-commerce, and I researched it. E-commerce is not something that receives a tax exemption in our zone. If zones can apply for an e-commerce approval to give exemption, but you have to apply for it as an additional approval by the state. There's only 15 of the 76 enterprise zones that offer e-commerce exemption, and it's not part of ours, and I didn't research it deep enough to know exactly what they're getting as exempt for the e-commerce portion of it. But it must be something that is taxable through the assessment and taxation department.
I wonder what that'd be.
Councilor Dreher.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Stewart, or any other councilors, are you familiar if the state has had any discussion about expanding the eligible businesses, in particular for childcare centers?
So Councilor Dreher, I'm not aware of it in any of the bills that I've seen presently about expanding that. There's two ways in creating criteria for your enterprise zone. Just so happens I was familiar because I served on the Eugene's enterprise zone, West Eugene's. And in the city of Eugene, they chose to create additional criteria over and above what the state's criteria was. So you can accept the state's basic criteria for an enterprise zone, adopt it, move in. That's what this zone has done. The city of Eugene, because they were concerned about Hynix at the time and enterprise zones and the amount of money that was being exempted from property tax, they put some additional criteria in their enterprise zone. And I believe childcare was one of the items that were eligible for money that was kind of clawed back from the exemption, and then the city of Eugene used a process to be able to distribute either that to the school districts or the items that were in their enterprise zone. So my short answer to you is that I don't know of any new bills that are working to changing the criteria specifically around childcare, but I do know that if the bodies chose, they could adopt additional criteria in the enterprise zone.
May I add a follow-up? So are you saying we could add additional criteria, like, for example, and your business has to offer childcare? Or are you saying we could expand eligible businesses to child care centers?
No, it would be the first. It would be, you would recognize that there is an employment barrier and you were pulling back some of the exemption and you were allocating it for a certain purpose. But I caution the council on that. We have two other bodies that we would have to get that approval through if we were to go through a revamping of the criteria.
Any other? Councilor Stennett?
I'm just trying to understand this. Thank you. So requirement for applying that each governing partner must be in support, and that's the three governments. That's excuse me. That's us, Lane County, and the city of Cresswell.
That's correct.
And you said there are 13 districts. Or 13
There's 13 taxing districts in the entire
in the zone.
zone. Crestwell has a few more because they have a library district and an urban renewal district, a few more than what Cottage Grove has. We have, I think there's two that relate to South Lane, two taxing mechanisms for South Lane Fire. There's the city, the school district, and actually LT and Transit District too, I believe.
So we don't have to gain the approval of any of those other 10
No,
districts to do.
We don't need their approval. In the past, that we have received support letters from those. I know South Lane Rural Fire put in a support letter back in 2012, but our only obligation is just to inform them that there is the redesignation of this district. We do not need their approval to move forward. The key approvals are the three governing partner jurisdictions.
They have been supported in the past.
Yeah, yes, they are. Well,
can I do one more?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
can I take that back? We will be going before those bodies for Crestwell and Lane County. Staff is supportive of it, but we'll see if the governing bodies are.
Thanks. I also wonder, is it possible to use this more, in essence? Maybe get someone in Crestwell to take advantage, and then maybe a part B, does Crestwell have these types of businesses and maybe perhaps industrial land to accommodate this? Or
Good question, Councilor. So essentially when we are trying to promote the enterprise zone, so the state promotes it through Business Oregon, through, it was Melissa Murphy in the past. Now it's we have a new representative for our region through Business Oregon. In fact, I think Councilor Irvin met that person today. So they're always watching for leads that come into communities and sharing with them what exists in communities to help them locate their businesses. So we have Business Oregon, then we have Lane County and their economic department does the same thing. And then each of us, the city of Crestwell and Cottage Grove, when somebody comes in and wants to make an investment, and it looks like it could be a qualifying investment, we engage the city planner, myself, engage with the individual and say, hey, we got an enterprise zone. We did this with Synergy Air. Looks like you might qualify and could apply. So we try to promote it whenever we have the opportunity, and the partners that are sending leads to our area are also promoting it. I will say in Crestwell, there's been a couple companies that I engaged with that I thought were going to move forward with applying, but in the end, one of them got sold to another company and chose to go a different direction. So they kind of scrapped their new building / equipment proposal that they were going to apply for.
Councilor Flack?
Well, I'm supportive, and having gone through this twice, I didn't have a whole lot of questions, but I guess what I'd love to see, I'm glad, Business Oregon is doing that, but do we have a packet ourselves for businesses coming in, which would talk about anything from MUPTs to enterprise zone to land use regulation to, it seemed like it'd be really handy if we had community development department, even just on the web page, one stop where folks can get all sorts of information about, I want to build this business and what are the incentives. And maybe that's already there, but I would recommend we do that, because I brought this up in our agenda session that, I'd mentioned Cresswell as well, and I'd love to see them benefit from this enterprise zone. And so what advertising are we doing to try to promote this zone and our other benefits that are available to businesses?
It's a very good question, Councilor. So there is on our webpage, if you go to Community Development Economic tab, there are probably not a comprehensive list of everything that offers, but I do have a list of all the various different programs that might help in various different applications. So there's the Diamond in the Rough application. There's some vertical housing credits that are available. There's the enterprise zone. One of my goals, as time allows, would be to enhance that and make it so a little more comprehensive. So I'll say that it's not perfect and it's probably not complete, but it is a goal to have it that way and to have ready available information when somebody comes in. Generally, somebody comes in, we print it off and we hand it to them as information. But it would be good to have a packet that maybe you guys could hand out as people approach you.
Or the Chamber of Commerce, as I see their directors in the audience.
And we also have, we've joined in publications with Lane County through the Economic Development Department, where Eugene and Springfield pay for most of the fold-out ad in the last version, for example, of the site selection guide, which goes out to all the site selection companies. And then we, with the smaller jurisdictions, put smaller ads on the back portion of the fold out. And that's where we highlight enterprise zone and other benefits that are here in Cottage Grove or Cresswell or Lake County. So we do have those as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
And actually, we can give you some of those. We have a box of those books, and the chamber has a box too. So
No more questions. Councilor
Director Stewart had answered my question at the beginning of the meeting. So thanks.
All right. Well, do you have anything else, Mr. Stewart?
Just the last item. Today we received a support letter from the CDC chair, Matt Parsons. I placed that at each of your table. It really pertains to the council item, but I just wanted to acknowledge that you did receive, hopefully, your chair. So that's all the questions. I want to thank you for the time, and you're more than welcome to email me if something comes up or a question, or you get a lead and say, hey, Mr. Stewart, go give me some information.
Thank you. That was very informative.
Thanks.
So with that, this meeting is adjourned.
This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome, Cassidy.
yeah, we are. Just turned it on. Good for them.
I figured I'll say. Which turns out for the last 2 years. Yeah, they tested it very
It was also kind of loose in the socket.
I have 7 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Dreer,
Present.
Counselor Irvin,
Here.
Youth Representative,
Here.
Counselor Fleck,
Here.
Counselor Meriday,
Here.
Counselor Savage,
Here.
Counselor Stennett,
Here.
Mayor Soulsby.
Here. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Items to be added to the agenda. We have a proclamation tonight for Peggy Brown. Whereas access to healthy meals contribute to the health and well-being of citizens and a healthy community, and whereas in February of 1998, under the direction of Peggy Brown, Trinity Lutheran Church launched the Tender Loving Care, TLC, Community Kitchen, and whereas TLC served meals twice a week to the total of approximately 85 meals per week to fixed income seniors and to the unhoused in a dining room with a family-like atmosphere. And whereas in 2001, meals were served at Our Lady of Perpetual Help Catholic Church, while the Trinity Lutheran Church, over the course of a 9-month-long remodeling project, expanded their facility to include a bigger kitchen and a dining room area. And whereas during the COVID pandemic, meals were required to be takeout only, and the volunteers led by Peggy Brown continued to serve to-go meals averaging 50 individuals per week. And whereas Peggy Brown, with the tremendous support from Pastor Jim, volunteers, community sharing food pantry, local ranchers, and community continue to source and prepare twice weekly meals. And whereas in the last quarter, Century TLC has utilized 53,500 volunteer hours, served 2,538 dinners, and totaled 208,817 meals in the Cottage Grove community. And now, therefore, during this 25th year anniversary of serving free community meals in Cottage Grove, I, Candace Soulsby, Mayor of the City of Cottage Grove, recognize and praise Trinity Lutheran Church, TLC, and Peggy Brown for their unwavering commitment to serving those in need within the community, and ask that all residents to become familiar with the history of Trinity Lutheran Church community dinners and celebrate its contributions, which have improved and enhanced the community health and well-being with access to warm, healthy meals in Cottage Grove. I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Cottage Grove to be affixed this 13th day of March 2023. Peggy Brown, can you please come up?
Thank you.
Point of question. Should I be added to the list? I came in as allegiance was being read or pledged.
For items on the agenda?
Off the agenda. Thank you.
Appearance of interested citizens for items not on the agenda. This is a time for citizen comment on items not listed on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. Individual speakers must be recognized by the presiding officer, provide their name, address, and will be allowed up to 5 minutes or less with council approval. Comments regarding any matter scheduled for a public hearing may be provided only in that hearing. Comments on agenda items may be taken prior to council discussion on that item. The council will not engage in any discussion or make any decisions based on public comment at this time. However, the council may take comments under advisement for discussion and action at a future council meeting. The first speaker I have is Johanna Z.
In a while. Hi, thank you, Mayor, councilors. 2 quick questions that I just added. I'm wondering when you guys are going to change your seats, because I know the council president usually sits there and it's just throwing me off, so thank you. The next is I got a copy of the lawsuit that ROP has against the city, and I was wondering if we could get an update on that today, if someone could. I had a quick question in it. It says there were policies that violated the sanctuary laws, and then I look at the policies look pretty good in Cottage Grove. So I wonder, do our policies need updating, or is it just perhaps poor wording on the case of the lawsuit? That's my question on that one, because everything looked really good on the current Cottage Grove policies. So thank you. As you know, earlier this month, 3 Cottage Grove residents went to the Other Side Academy in Salt Lake City for an immersion training to see if it would be a good model for our community. Could we adapt it for Cottage Grove, as their model is geared mostly towards, they're mostly in larger cities. Community Strong Cottage Grove has been developing a community first model to address the homeless issue. We want the most successful program out there. So this decades old approach, the classic therapeutic community model, is peer run, self-funded, no taxpayer money, program with no cost to participants. Well, it really convinced us. 3 days, and we were just life-changing. It was transformational for us. I think we would really benefit to have that here. At the same token, it was with great dismay, that I read the Chronicles article regarding Chief Shepherd and Captain Gagner coming on the heels of this other lawsuit that I mentioned against the city alleging immigration violations. So bad behavior left unchecked will continue or escalate. This is exactly the message we heard from Dave DeRocher of the Other Side Academy. And if you haven't heard March 9th's Beeper Show, it's certainly something to listen to. I think at this point it's got well over 500 views, which, I don't know, it seems like a pretty popular program at this point. So this recent information regarding our police force and the culture in our community, though, points to deeper issues. We're sitting in a victim paradigm, always looking for someone to blame. Many people who hailed the 2 former officers in question as model citizens now are quick to kind of throw them under the bus. But who allowed all of this behavior to continue for years? So this is a 2-way street. We all need to be accountable. One of the values of the Other Side Academy is 200% accountability, 100% for myself and 100% for the other person. We can call out bad behavior every single time. There we we were immersed completely with every aspect of the program, and nothing went unchecked. There were consequences for every action. It was a complete reprogramming. So we don't have to label it or remain in this victimhood. The culture we experienced firsthand in the program demonstrated this high level of accountability. So someone who allows you to lie, cheat, steal, manipulate is an enabler, and that relationship is toxic. We need to stop allowing bad behavior in our community. So those who, who do not are not doing themselves a service or that other person. So it's sad what we, read in the paper. I wish we had, heard about it from our staff, but I'm jumping because I know I'm running out of time here, and thank you. I think what the three of us did, and I speak for myself though, and one other at least, we came back and we took a look at our own personal actions and saying, are they coming from a place of love and kindness, and can we do better? I mean, this was just 3 days, and this program is actually an extensive program. So, in our community, have you looked at the curriculum in our schools? It's an abomination. Right? The standards are getting lower and lower, and the grooming of our children is just getting more blatant. So parents, please take a close look at that health education curriculum. This is what we're breeding in our community. Teens shouldn't be assigned to talk to each other about having sex with each other. This is, pretty sad. So as we move forward, I question the ability of our current staff leadership to be able to create the culture we're looking for. Because we want communication, we want honesty. This must have been incredibly challenging. There's so much going on, and there's been a lot of work done, and clearly this was no easy answer. So I'm seeing more and more the value of having the city council oversee the police chief. This would go far in creating more trust with the public at this point. And I say, what are your expectations for city staff? And I just have 10 more seconds here. What are our standards? And do you guys know, the council members, that you guys are the ones in charge? I rarely see you directing city staff. Are you requiring more training for our manager and his assistant in communication skills? There's a way to say that you can't share information that breeds trust and not the animosity that has occurred. So I hope people will show up at next council meeting. We've got Dave DeRocher, who's actually coming here in person to present. So really looking forward to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Amy Merriday.
Amy Merriday, 205 Adams Avenue, Cottage Grove. I chalked out in front of City Hall tonight, it says back the blue with a question mark. And so I'm here tonight to back the blue. I know this is shocking for people, but the thing about backing the blue is this. It's sort of like a half phrase, back the blue. And what does it imply? It implies, comma, no matter what they do. That's not what I'm talking about. And so I'd just like to reiterate my allegiance to the flag, which I never say. And the people who put the blue flag line on the flag, that's offensive and a violation of flag code, people. Okay? So everybody's wondering why didn't Richard Myers know what the hell was going on? And so I have a theory, and I'm now moving into the satire portion of my comment, just for the people who don't know. And so Dave DeRocher is a kind of guy we could think about. And so Richard Myers, my theory is the reason that he didn't know what's going on is that he is impeccable morally and ethically. He's a man of faith, and it may have been difficult for people to come and tell him about the sewer. Okay? And so here's the satire part. Dave DeRocher, now let's think about him for city manager rather than the city council. Let's think about Dave DeRocher and his ilk, people who are known, who did time, people who are felons, people who are down and dirty, people who really know what it's all about. That's the kind of leadership the Other Side Academy has that you'll be hearing about in March 27th. Okay? And so it's a little bit sad. I backed the blue, and I'm kind of shocked. But if we don't pass the levy to increase, further our jail system. We could move to a vigilante situation in this town without very much difficulty. And so I'm actually backing the levy, continuing the levy to maintain the jail. And I would just like to ask you to consider having a kind of police oversight committee that some towns have. They have different names for it. Some places they call it Cop Watch. Other places they call it a, civilian review board. But it might not be a bad time to think about adding some committee work, that and a committee about disability rights in our town. And let's just move forward. Thank you, people.
Thank you.
Yeah, I spoke last week, and though I may not need this microphone, I'm going to use it anyway. I spoke last week.
Sean, will you state your name and address?
Thank you. Sean Wayne Goddard, 811, I think it's East Main Street, Cottage Grove Hotel Apartments. 10 years ago, I left Cottage Grove. It was one of the hardest things to do. After raising my 3 children here, my marriage ended, unfortunately. The services that I attained as a stay-at-home father were strict. It has taken almost 10 years for me to return. Why? Why would I come back after seemingly being run out? Because my whole life has been about challenging the bully. Taking one for the team. Being an unconditional friend. Trust. I have had my own share of disappointment. Oddly, I keep reaching out my hand to pull others up. I never understood why these words hurt so. You gotta help yourself before you help others. Simply put, I first learned I needed help by helping someone else. That person was Tashika Weinstein. She was deaf and blind in both eyes and worked in student government with me when I worked for the student government of Lane County at Lane Community College. Knowing I've been pulled down a little bit by helping others is okay with me. They call me Mr. Bubble. And I stay on my donut. That's $0. If you can smell my breath, you're standing way too close to me. So this social distancing that we really realize now has actually been helping me mentally. Today I face a bully, a city council member, director of human resources services for the poor. He fears me, assaulted me with our judiciary, and was found to have no cause. Today I ask why. Why seek stalking orders against me? We are men. This law was designed for battered women. You ask free neither. You are of neither a woman and have never been physically abused by this black man. One of your workers did sleep with me. You chose to protect the institution instead of the recipient of service. These are my concerns. Mike Fleck is unfit to serve as a council member due to violations of a resident's civil and human rights through the use of a stalking order, restraining orders, and most recently and frequently, trespass notice without cause. I definitely need to bring this forth for greater context about what I spoke about last week, because I know I was very emotional. The fact that the federal government had to seek oversight over Community Sharing's Mike Fleck and ask Faith Stewart to remedy these offenses. And when I asked Mr. Faith Stewart if he remembered what he did, he said no. So I now have to do the research to find out what Faith Stewart did so that community insurance could be in compliance of the federal LIHEAP program upon which they violated 10 years ago. And the fact that that person that violated the federal laws in LIHEAP is now sitting as a city council member in front of us and sent me a letter, certified. You sent me a certified letter after I presented here. So that means that you retaliated against me as a city council member. I end.
All right. Item 5, public hearing. I see none. Consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second. All right. Motion carries. Item 7, resolutions and ordinances.
Did we vote?
I'm sorry.
Was there a vote?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So just.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Resolutions and ordinances. Item A, resolution supporting redesignation of the Cottage Grove Cresswell South Lane County Enterprise Zone. Staff report by Public Works, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. This resolution, well, I'll just start with, I want to thank each of the members for the work session that we just completed before the regular council meeting. This resolution is in support of redesignation of our present enterprise zone, which is in partnership with the City of Cresswell and Lane County Board of Commissioners. It's a requirement to apply for redesignation. Our enterprise zone was first established in 2002. It was a partnership with Lane County and Cottage Grove. And then in 2012, in redesignation, it was expanded to include the City of Cresswell and the area in Saginaw that is industrial land in unincorporated Lane County. During the last 10 years period, I point out that there was 108 new jobs that were created through the investments by businesses that qualified, for a total of $814,000 in property tax exemption. 763,894 were inside the city limits of Cottage Grove, and the remaining 50,106 was in South Lane County at the Saginaw site. So I would just leave it there. If there's any further questions of council, staff would recommend that council approve the resolution and support. I will be attending the Lane County Board of Commissioners meeting next Tuesday. I believe that today's 13th, so it'll be the 21st. And then I will be in Cresswell for hopefully their support on April 10th.
Any other final questions? Yeah. Resolution number?
2091.
Madam Mayor, I move that the council adopt resolution 2091.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? No? All those in favor? Oh.
I'm sorry, pardon me. It's my understanding that there might be somebody here to speak.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I am sorry. Chamber of Commerce. We have Cameron Wrighton and Georgia Haskell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Doesn't sound like you need to hear it, but I nonetheless just wanted to take a moment, George, and I wanted to come and let you know that our board has taken a keen interest in this issue. I won't belabor the points that Mr. Stewart shared with you earlier in the evening during the work session, but I will say that both in my day job and with my chamber work, I encounter a lot of situations where we've got folks that are living in this community, and we're kind of a bedroom community to the Eugene-Springfield metro area. And if we can get more facilities that provide better living wage jobs here locally, it's to the benefit of our community. And if you actually have folks that don't have to commute to Eugene-Springfield for that good job, then they actually have more of an opportunity to participate in all of the aspects of life, be it organizations, events, activities, etc., that make this community the special place that it is. So I would just encourage the council on behalf of the Cottage Grove Area Chamber of Commerce to support the resolution to renew the enterprise zone. Georgia, anything else?
No, Cameron, I think you pretty much covered it. Economic development is the chamber's number one focus.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Merity?
Aye.
Counselor Savage?
Aye.
Counselor Stennett?
Aye.
Counselor Dreer?
Aye.
Counselor Irvin?
Aye.
Youth Representative?
Aye.
Counselor Fleck?
Aye.
Mayor Solsby?
Aye. Business from the City Council. A request for extension of completion deadline for resolution number 2058, granting a multiple unit property tax exemption, MUPD, program for the Matsur Development LLC for 7-unit cottage cluster development at map T1 2003 2844 00700. Staff report by Mr. Mongan.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council. At the December 13, 2021 Council meeting, Council adopted Resolution 2058, granting a 10-year abatement on property taxes related to the improvement associated with the Campfire Cottages or Matsur development through the MUPD program. Staff is returning to Council at this time because the developer, Matt Boozer of Matsur Development, has submitted a request to have the effective period of the 10-year abatement adjusted. In the adopted Resolution 2058, the beginning of the 10-year term begins November 7th, 2023, or at the time of completion, whichever comes first. In Mr. Boozer's request to modify the period of abatement, he cites issues with supply and labor shortages. He is asking Council to amend the effective period of tax abatement from November 7th, 2023 to December 10th of 2024. Per section 3.10.090, the Council may grant an extension if the Council finds that construction or addition of or conversion to the multi-unit housing was not completed by the deadline for actions required for exemptions specified in ORS 307.637 due to circumstances beyond the control of the owner, and that the owner has been acting and could reasonably be expected to act in good faith and with due diligence. It may extend the deadline for completion of construction for a period not to exceed 12 consecutive months. As stated above, Mr. Boozer cites delays associated with labor shortages and supply chain issues, which staff cannot independently verify, but issues associated with labor and supply have been widely reported as collateral effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Regarding Mr. Boozer's good faith and due diligence, staff can report that he has maintained active building permits through the course of the project, and at the January meeting of the Planning Commission, he received conditional approval for the development of phase 2 of the project, which includes the remaining 3 cottages. Staff has prepared a draft resolution for your consideration should you wish to grant the requested modification. As shown in section 3.10.090, Council may only grant an extension not to exceed 12 consecutive months. The draft resolution granting the extension will amend the completion date from November 7th, 2023 to November 7th, 2024. Mr. Boozer's request for extension and Resolution 2058 are attached to this memo. As recommended, the Council consider whether to approve the request for modification to the approved multi-unit property tax exemption. If council desires to approve the modification to the approved MUPD, the draft resolution is attached.
Councillor Fleck.
Well, we certainly have seen issues in construction on many projects in town. This seems like a completely reasonable request to me. It caught me a little off guard, and I just noticed that it's not in the resolution ordinance section, but I'm assuming that would be resolution 2092 if I were to make that motion.
It actually caught me off guard as well.
Sorry.
Yes, it would.
So with that, I will move that the council adopt resolution 2092.
Second. We have a motion with a second. Discussion?
Thank you, Mayor Soulsby. I just have a question. I'm in support of this. I think we've all had issues with the supply chain. It absolutely seems reasonable. But I did notice that he's asking for an extension that's greater than a year. So we're already pulling back a little bit of time. What happens if this doesn't get completed within that year? Can he apply for another extension? Does that null and void the MUPD eligibility? I'm just curious.
Mayor, Councilor Savage. So if he can't he essentially asked for 35 more days than what the code explicitly says you can grant, that 12 consecutive months. What that would mean is that he would potentially miss out on having a completed project in 1 month of that abatement time frame. So that date certain, the proposed November 7th date, just means, okay, that's when the improvements on site will come off the tax rolls for that 10-year period. So that's basically all it would mean. It doesn't mean that it terminates or goes away or anything like that. The addition of that building in the timeline of when it starts just allows for construction. We wouldn't want it, to have you all approve a MUPD and then it takes them a year and a half to build it. They don't get the benefit of that 10 years of realization. There are some other programs provided through the State Department of Revenue, though, however, that staff does advise developers on that basically allow for up to a period of 2 years, you can abate the percentage completed of an ongoing construction project. So some of the projects we've seen around town, Gateway Apartments, for example, they, likely some portion of the completed project hit the tax rolls. They were, if they wanted to, could apply for a 1 year abatement on that improvement value because they're not actually getting any revenue yet. They're still putting out in order to construct it. So a lot there, but.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Merryday.
Yeah, excuse me if Planner Morgan, if this sounds like I'm springing something on you, but I was reviewing the document today and it is quite lengthy. And I was just wondering, this happened before I was on council. I was wondering, was there any specified public benefit in the MUPD?
Mayor, Councilor Merryday. Yeah, so if I remember correctly, the public benefits that were offered by the developer, master development, and then approved by council they were going to do a mixed use development up abutting on the main street. So with the 7 cottages, and then there's still one more space there where they're proposed to do kind of a lit work building. So downstairs would be small office space, upstairs would be a dwelling. Other public benefits are ADA improvements to the right of way that were offered and approved by council at the time.
Was there any affordable housing component to it? No. Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Councilor Irvin?
Aye.
Councilor Fleck?
Aye.
Councilor Merryday?
Aye.
Councilor Savage?
Aye.
Youth Representative?
Aye.
Councilor Dreer?
Aye.
Councilor Stennett?
Aye.
Mayor Soulsby?
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Mongan. Item B, TMDL Implementation Plan Background and Progress Update Staff Report by Mr. Mongan.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. It's that time of year again for the city's annual TMDL report. The TMDL Implementation Plan for Cottage Grove, which was adopted in February 2008, describes the strategies the city uses or intends to use in order to reduce various forms of pollution in the Coast Fork sub-basin of the Willamette River. The bodies of water included within the Coast Fork sub-basin under the jurisdiction of the City of Cottage Grove include the Coast Fork Willamette, Row River, and Silk Creek. The overarching goal of the implementation plan is to minimize or wherever possible eliminate the different types of pollution contributions to surface waters within the jurisdictional control of the City of Cottage Grove. Our primary pollutant targets are bacteria, temperature, and mercury. Through a combination of strategies, including education and outreach, pollution prevention, hillside protection, riparian protection, erosion control, stormwater planning and management, the City of Cottage Grove has made a commitment to work to reduce non-point source pollution through this TMDL implementation plan. Staff has updated the TMDL implementation matrix every 5 years as required by DEQ since its adoption in 2008. Many of the strategies outlined in the current 2018 to 2023 matrix are continuations of ongoing projects that have proven successful over the last 15 years in addressing TMDL concerns. Examples include leaf pickup, riparian, hillside development code enforcement, urban forestry committee tree plantings, partnership with Coast Fork Willamette Watershed Council, erosion prevention program, and the more recently adopted stormwater detention and treatment ordinance. These are just some examples of the suite of things that we do. At last year's annual TMDL update and report to council, staff informed council that the city was required to update our TMDL implementation plan matrix to include mercury-specific mitigation actions to our plan by September 3rd of 2022. Staff submitted the draft mercury TMDL matrix as required, and on January 19th of this year, the city received notice that our plan was approved by the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. With this approval, the city now must meet additional reporting requirements to ensure compliance with DEQ regulation, such as annual program evaluation to improve program quality. Attached, you'll find the 2021-22 implementation plan, matrix report, the approved Mercury TMDL, and the letter of approval for the Mercury TMDL plan. I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions? No, I think you answered everything. Thank you. Item C, City Council Subcommittee and Liaison Appointments, Staff Report by Mr. Myers.
You have before you in the packet the list of the liaison and subcommittee appointments that have been reviewed and submitted by the mayor for your approval. There's also one committee that's on there that has a vacancy, and that's the Vision Keepers. So the list is for your approval. The Vision Keepers will need a motion and a second to appoint by the council to fill that spot.
Mr. Fleck.
Madam Mayor, yes, at our agenda session on Friday, Councilor Stinnett indicated his willingness to serve on that, on the Vision Keeper Committee. So I move that we appoint Councilor Stinnett to that position.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And I will go ahead and finish off with the rest of it and move that we approve the mayor's subcommittee and liaison appointments.
Second. Motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Concerns from council. Councilor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. We had a couple of committee appointments. Speaking of, our last item to give a report on. First one is the Lane Economic Committee. We did have our new representative from Business Oregon present and kind of give the rundown of what they do. Certainly the enterprise zones are one of the items under their purview. And their website is updated, so they're being updated. So if you have old literature to search Business Oregon, they do have a number of programs to help fund small businesses that were seemed quite attractive and help filling out applications for other assistance. Most of what they're providing is a free resource to the community within Oregon. So something to check out. I believe Laura Enstrom is the new representative. So also in addition, next month April 10th, because it's always the first Monday, just like the second Monday. We'll have the Lane County economist present, and there's a request that if there's any particular type of information that would be of interest that could help in decision making, you can certainly feel free to pass it to me, and I can pass it on. I sent an email today with different things. They'd be interested in knowing what the economic impact is. So one of those, I don't know what the economic impact of Measure 110 is on the state in its passage, but that was one of the requests. So it could be really anything that impacts stuff we do here. So please pass that on. South Valley Athletics, I was pleased to hear that I wasn't missing the last 2 years of committee appointments on that like I thought originally. So that was my first meeting, and I appreciated being able to be part of their meeting and just kind of learning what the organization does and its history. And so discussions were surrounding a number of things, but certainly improving coach, ref, parent relations. And some good ideas were coming out of that. Learned that they have a program director position, so welcome. And part of that, share appreciation for the city for collaborating in the use of one of the aerators so that they could go out and do more work and prepare more fields and create more space for use. So I'm looking forward to continuing on there and seeing what other partnerships and relationships can be developed. I know one of them has to do with the need for transportation for kiddos and some of their transportation options diminished, but there might be some possibility with South Lane Wheels. We'll see what happens. So hopefully we can make things run there. And I think those are the two that I can remember right now. Oh, no. Sorry, Community Foundation. It's another one that was my second meeting. First, there was an award grant. So just a reminder, there is a ceremony for passing out the grant awards that have been already determined on the 14th. So that's Tuesday coming up.
Isn't it Wednesday? Right?
Is it Wednesday?
I think it might be Wednesday.
I think it has to be Tuesday.
I believe it was the 14th.
Oh, maybe it is Tuesday.
I'd miss it if it was Wednesday. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
That's tomorrow.
Yes, it is tomorrow.
Yes. From 12 to 1 in the Shepherd. So welcome everybody. Welcome to come. Those are grants that are benefiting organizations that are doing good work for the community here in Cottage Grove. And then another through the Yard, in addition to the Yard Foundation, but another grant was issued for a mentoring program. So we had a presentation on a mentoring program that really focuses on picking a cohort from, I think it's age 6 years old, all the way through for 12 years. And I want to say there are 80 families in the Cottage Grove area connected with that. It might be 16 individuals, but 16 kids, 80 affected people, something to that nature. So maybe I'll be able to give progress reports on that as that continues on. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Flack.
Well, I will continue in that vein. I had 2 meetings last week. The first was the Lane Area Commission on Transportation. The STIP is in its final phases, moving up the chain. There are actually several. That's the State Transportation Improvement Plan. Thank you. Yes, I haven't been on that committee in a while. This is my first time back in many years. So, but yes, really encouraging. There are a lot of projects that are planned in our area. I-5 out, I believe it's from 174 down south. There's a project. There's quite a few projects. So that's pretty exciting news. There had been some discussion about some of the bills at the legislature currently. They've opted at this point not to advocate or speak against any. I think for me, I've shared with the council, I would not want a committee with appointments from other committees to make positions without really there being solid support. So I'm encouraged by that. Our other meeting was the LRAPA board meeting this week, and since Director Dietrich is in the audience, I won't steal his thunder, but just to say that we had our first of 2 budget meetings, and we discussed some legislation as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Merriday.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to also report on some committees. The Cottage Grove Community Development Corporation met last Friday, and a part of the discussion was in support of the enterprise zone. Director Stewart was there to also explain some of our questions. So there was strong support from that group. Also, we heard from the local rain coordinator and got an update on their activities and looking towards the future about what to do, and possibly another build the business type activity to attract entrepreneurs. I did get some clarification on the Lane Workforce Council. I thought I was just an observer, but I'm actually a board member, and so I'm getting trained tomorrow, no, Wednesday, and the board is meeting on Thursday, and I'll also will be getting some additional training the following Thursday to learn what my actual duties are. And just on a semi-personal note, but the reason I actually got involved at all with city government was working to restore the swinging bridge. And tomorrow night from 5 to 7, I've been invited to speak at the History Pub, which is sponsored by Downtown Cottage Grove and the Cottage Grove Genealogical Society. And we'll be speaking on the history of the swinging bridge and the person behind it, James Knox Polk Curran, and the Curran family in general. And I think that was that activity, the bringing back of the swinging bridge, was an excellent example of citizens and city government working together.
Thank you. Anyone else? Youth Representative Cassidy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On behalf of the Youth Advisory Council, I would like to invite the council members and mayor to a lunch on March 17th, this Friday at 11:30 in honor of our Academy Day.
Oh, thank you.
Where?
Here in the council chamber.
At what time, Cassidy?
11:30.
11:30. Okay. Anyone else? Well, I went to the Downtown Cottage Grove meeting, and that's a merger of EBID and Downtown Cottage Grove. And they are very excited on the projects that they're working on. They're looking into several grants and trying to help local businesses with that, and all their new ideas for projects coming up for this coming year. And one of the projects that they are in the works with is the Fall Festival. And it's looking like that's going to be set up for September 22nd and 23rd, just off the top of my head, I believe that's when it is. And so they're going to be looking for volunteers. So anyone that would like to get on board with that. All right. We'll move on. Business from the city manager.
Yes, we have, as has been introduced already, the executive director of LRAPA is here, Lane Regional Air Protection Agency. I'm Steve Dietrich, and to give our annual report, which we haven't seen for a couple of years because they've been recruiting and the COVID and all of that stuff. So it's exciting to have him back. And he will answer any questions, or you know, it is what his thing up here.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Silsby and members of the City Council. Steve Dietrich, I've been LRAPA's director. You have to put it on a different view.
It's on the view. It's supposed to be. This is crazy. It does this again. Let's see if we can get it.
Been LRAPA's director almost 2 years next month.
We had this problem last time.
by way of introduction, well, city manager's trying to change the format. My management and environmental experience has taken place basically in 3 states, starting in Virginia, moving to Wyoming, and now here in Oregon. I have over 36 years of environmental experience, at least 20 of that in air quality. And tonight I'd like to run through about 9 slides to describe in a little detail about the work that LRAPA does, the services that we provide everyone in Lane County, including the city of Cottage Grove, as well as the importance of increasing our partnership opportunity. There we go.
It does it here, but it won't do it up on the screen.
The share button down at the bottom, or?
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
May I just ask that you speak into the mic? Yes, right, thanks.
How's that?
Yes.
Is that loud enough?
Well, there's people online.
Okay.
Listen, so that's fine.
All right. I was trying to be sensitive to this sensitive mic.
If you just pass out the opera goggles, we can
try.
Are the slides the same as in our packet? Because
Yeah, they are. They are.
They are.
It's supposed to be sharing and showing the screen that's on my screen, and it's not.
It's okay. That's why we have backup plans.
Yes, that's why we have a backup.
So if we go on to the second slide there, LRAPA is responsible for implementing the Federal Clean Air Act in Lane County. The Federal Clean Air Act was signed into law in 1970, and amendments to the Clean Air Act occurred in 1977 and 1990. The federal authority is passed to the state, which in Oregon is held by Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. The Oregon DEQ can and has added additional regulations statewide. The Cleaner Air Oregon is an example of a stringent regulation that they've provided. LRAPA administers state air programs like the Cleaner Air Oregon in Lane County. LRAPA has been delegated state and federal authority to monitor and regulate and protect air quality in Lane County. LRAPA is the only local air pollution authority in Oregon. 5 regional partners founded LRAPA in 1968 to do this important work locally, allowing complex rules and regulations to be implemented by the entity familiar with the area, its communities, and businesses. LRAPA rules and regulations are closely aligned with the state's regulations statewide. Air regulations must be at least as stringent as the authority is delegated from the national to the local level, meaning LRAPA cannot be any less strict than DEQ, and DEQ cannot be any less strict than EPA. Next slide, please. So LRAPA implements the state, local, state, and federal rules and regulations, which is our core responsibility. LRAPA monitors air quality, both the National Ambient Air Quality Standards and air toxics, which is a state-only program, and implements strategies and programs to protect and improve air quality. We're actually proud of our ambient monitoring network, which consists of 8 monitoring sites across Lane County and is more extensive than what DEQ could actually administer by themselves. One of those monitors is here in Cottage Grove. It monitors PM 2.5 continuously. LRAPA protects air quality by issuing air permits to businesses who emit pollution above a certain de minimis level. LRAPA assures compliance with these permits through both announced and unannounced inspections, compliance inspections, source testing, complaint investigations, and on-site facility emissions monitoring and reporting. Our agency strives to provide good, accurate, and timely information to the public and our partners on air-related issues, such as the Air Quality Index on our website that most of you are familiar with. And finally, LRAPA enforces our rules in Lane County to encourage and emphasize the importance of compliance, which levels the playing field with industry. Next slide, please. LRAPA provides several services to Lane County, and I'll go over a few of those here. ARAPA's complaint intake, response, and detailed investigations into air quality complaints is a service not provided to many Oregonians outside of Lane County. On average, ARAPA responds to about 96% of all the complaints that are submitted. Outdoor burning or backyard burning is an important tool for rural landowners to manage overgrown vegetation. ARAPA manages the outdoor burning season to best assure smoke is not negatively impacting others, especially the neighbors. Fees are collected from civil penalties and are annually forwarded to Lane County to their general fund. The amount varies from year to year, but it's usually between $20,000 and $50,000 a year from penalties. Next slide. Continuing with the services we provide, stationary, commercial, and industrial businesses in Lane County who emit air pollution above a certain threshold are required to receive an air permit from ARAPA. Our local permitting program is more detailed and timely than you might see elsewhere. Incidentally, there are 11 businesses in Cottage Grove that have an ARAPA air permit currently. Our ambient monitoring network is more extensive in Lane County because of ARAPA. Our agency has leveraged a second air toxics monitor, of which there are only 9 in the whole state of Oregon, that won't otherwise exist. ARAPA plans to use the second air toxics monitor and periodically relocate it to different locations. In 2024, we're planning to move the air toxic site from Oak Ridge to Springfield to help assess our progress in Clean Air Oregon in that area. Next slide. And over the years, ARAPA has worked closely with the city of Oak Ridge and nonprofits in the community to implement programs to improve air quality in Oak Ridge. The 2 EPA targeted airshed grants fund these efforts since 2019. The graph on this slide on the left illustrates the reduction in PM 2.5 at 5 of the 8 ARAPA ambient monitoring sites to include Oak Ridge, to below the current EPA National Ambient Air Quality Standards limit, represented by the top horizontal dash line, which is, if you can't read it, it's 12 micrograms per cubic meter currently. The result of all this effort with the tag monies and the efforts that's taken place over the years, ARAPA has successfully requested EPA redesignate the Oak Ridge West Fur airshed from non-attainment of the federal standards to actually attainment for the PM 2.5 and PM 10 standard. And the timeline for the process to attainment spanned many years since EPA designated the area as non-attained back in 2009. The redesignation status took effect in September of 2022. And this was a great accomplishment for not only ARAPA, but all the local partners in Oak Ridge. However, since this redesignation, the EPA is now considering lowering the PM 2.5 standard from 12 to somewhere between 9 and 10 micrograms per cubic meter, which is represented by the blue and red horizontal lines in that graph. Next slide, please. So in the last few years, wildfires have become a greater presence on Oregon's landscape. Everyone remembers the Holiday Farm Fire in 2020, and most recently the Cedar Creek Fire just outside of Oak Ridge in 2022. ARAPA is closely involved with state and federal agencies such as the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, the Lane County Public Health, Oregon Health Authority, the Oregon Department of Forestry, the U.S. Forest Service, and the National Weather Service to forecast smoke movement and impacts with communities. ARAPA can and does issue air quality advisories in Lane County to inform the public when air quality will reach unhealthy levels. And ARAPA has requested the U.S. Forest Service make more considerations of the National Ambient Air Quality Standards in forest management and wildfire suppression efforts. Engagement with the U.S. Forest Service is ongoing, including an ARAPA presentation in Corvallis that I gave back on February 8th at the Post-Fire Research and Monitoring Symposium. It was attended by about 600 people, so there's a big interest in wildfires right now. Next slide, please. Much of the work done in Oak Ridge to improve air quality would not have been possible without that funding I mentioned earlier from EPA in the form of targeted airshed grants. We've been able to secure 2 tags, the first in 2019 and the second in 2021 for a total of $7.6 million. And looking forward in time, LRAPA is preparing to maximize the agency's ability to bring federal dollars to the county. We've hired a finance grant analyst to pursue air-related grants from the American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act, which I know you've probably heard about, as well as any grants related to environmental justice and communities overburdened by pollution. We also want to look for ways to collaborate with the city of Cottage Grove and all of our partners and seek out and apply for additional grant funding. There seems to be a lot of it right now. Our rapid service to Lane County business remain a key focus of our agency activities. We strive to use environmentally protective air permits that conform to existing rules and regulations. Our local efforts allow LRAP to pass a greater number of Lane County sources through the Clean Air Oregon, for example. Clean Air Oregon is a relatively new state toxic air program, permitting program that regulates sources based on potential health risk. And the sharing of information related to industry in Lane County is expanded to the agency's ability to tailor messages and outreach to the needs of Lane County communities. Next slide. So in order to increase funding opportunities, LRAPA is working to improve connections and relationships with our partners, such as you here tonight in Cottage Grove. The first annual partner meeting that we've had took place in August of last year. The meeting reviewed the intergovernment agreement which founded LRAPA. We also provided information on financial structure and the importance of our maintenance of effort and our ability to accomplish work in the Lane County. The meeting also detailed ongoing efforts, public affair initiatives, and operational successes and other support services provided by LRAPA. For your information, you can see who attended the meeting in last August, including Richard Myers, your city manager. And we look for all opportunities to have continuous progress with these types of meetings. And lastly, on the last slide, we revamped our website. It went live on September 15th of last year. The upgrade was in response mostly from feedback that was provided to us by Lane County residents wishing for a more intuitive site that provides direct access to the important information that they constantly seek in an easy and understandable format. So we're excited about this format. We're getting a lot of good feedback, so spend some time on there. There's a lot of good, easily accessible information now. And with that, that's my last slide, and I'll entertain some questions.
Any questions? Councilor Merryday.
What is the position on LRAPA with prescribed burning?
The position is it is allowed. We just have regulations that put sideboards on when it can occur and where it can occur.
Councilor Flack.
And further clarification, Eugene has actually banned. So, I mean, every city has the ability, and LRAPA will enforce what that city decides it wants. So our PM25 standards, which is the very fine particulate, in our area, wood smoke is the primary culprit, but in bigger metropolitan areas, correct me if I'm wrong, diesel can also be a contributor to PM25.
Yeah. Mayor Soulsby and City Council. Yes, that's correct. That's one of the pollutants in diesel fuel.
Yeah, and so in our area in Eugene, Springfield, and the Cottage Grove area, we're not as close as Oak Ridge because of the inversions they get because they're in a bowl up there. So they're under a much tighter restriction because it impacts the air quality. And the PM25 is so dangerous because it can actually get right through your lungs into your bloodstream. So really some challenges there.
And I could add that we also coordinate with the U.S. Forest Service, who does a lot of prescribed burning. But outside of their property, that they administer those burnings, we have outdoor burning letter permits that we issue, and we allow that to happen, but we go out there and inspect the sites first to make sure it's going to meet all of the requirements before the fire is actually allowed to happen.
Thank you.
Councilor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Are the revenues on permit, or are there fees associated with permits?
Yes, there are. We have two different permitting programs which have a different fee schedule. One is Title V, which is our largest emitters and our biggest sources that get the more complex permit. So those fees tend to be higher than the air contaminant discharge permits that we issue for minor sources or smaller sources of emissions. Yeah, they both have a fee schedule though.
And are those, is that a separate amount collected per year than the 20 to 50? I think there was a slide that was talking about 20 to 50 on.
I apologize. I apologize for not being able to see the slide, but that 20 to 50,000 is on average the fines that we assess for non-compliance of our permits. That money is separate than the fee schedules and the fee monies that's generated from the permitting program, the applicants that apply for permits.
And the follow-up to that, I seem to remember there being a program in the Oak Ridge area about changing out wood stoves. And so I was always curious as to, are those initiatives that are funded through penalties and fees, or do you have like a baseline federal funding? How do these programs happen and how are they identified?
Very good question. So I mentioned earlier the two TAG grants, targeted airshed grants that came from EPA, one in 2019 and one in 2022, I think it is, that totaled at $7.6 million. That money is directly from EPA to do things like wood stove replacements in the city of Oak Ridge and the Westford area, as well as some other items like good sources of firewood, making sure that it's not green firewood, and weatherization of homes so you don't have to burn as much to keep your temperature in your house where you need it. But the brunt of it is wood stove replacement, and that's what funds that effort, not the fines.
And were those passed through LRAPA, or like did LRAPA apply for them, or was that applied those grants through a municipality? Or
so we applied for those grants directly with EPA, and when they were awarded, LRAPA administered those funds. But we don't do the work on the ground. We have others that do the work on the ground, that either are contractors or local partners in the community themselves, such as the Willamette Valley Solutions and some other groups that are already established in that area to do that work.
There's a direction I was going with this. There has been talk on other groups around town about the weatherization and that being a key piece for raising, the poverty experience level for people, as well as, being just generally more efficient, being environmentally friendly. Is there a set of criteria based on the parts per million or the ppm 2.5 that necessitate that, or would Cottage Grove be open to be receiving funding to help residents?
That's a good question. So the tag that I described earlier from EPA, the reason that Oak Ridge and the Westford area were eligible is because their airshed was in non-attainment of the standard, whereas Cottage Grove, the city of Cottage Grove, is currently in attainment. So in order to get similar types of funding, it wouldn't be that targeted airshed grant funding. It would be another form of funding that would possibly come from the American Rescue Plan or Inflation Reduction Act, but it wouldn't. Without being in non-attainment status, it's very hard to qualify for that direct funding for what you just described.
Councilor Savage.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you so much for the presentation. I feel like I learned more than I didn't know. I didn't realize I didn't know, so I appreciate you being here. I was out to dinner with friends the other night, and we were talking about burn barrels. And it makes sense that burn barrels aren't allowed in city limits, although people do have backyard fires, yard debris and such. But now burn barrels are also not allowed outside of town in county properties. So I'm just kind of curious why that is, because I didn't know how to answer that. I couldn't answer that at dinner the other night, and I'd be amiss if I didn't ask you.
Another good question, and it's burn barrels have been around a long time, even before some of these rules even existed. I think the temptation is you can put anything you want in a burn barrel, and it's hard to figure out whether you're burning something that you shouldn't be. So by eliminating the ability to use a burn barrel, the things that shouldn't be burned won't be burned. The other thing is your neighbors are close by, and if the fire isn't well tended, it smokes a lot. And depending on what you put in there, it could smoke for a long time. And then we get complaints because the neighbors don't like the inconvenience of what's going on and how, it affects their air quality. So it was decided years ago that the burn barrel was no longer a good idea for those reasons, and there's probably some that I haven't even thought of.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else?
And just for full disclosure, I was one of the ones who voted for that. So that was one where the LRAPA board, which was a group of all of us, from input, especially the air not getting in there. So they tend to smoke more because you're not getting as much air. And so for especially your neighbor, as Mr. Diedrich mentioned, I will mention, the fines do not come through the county to LRAPA. So LRAPA does not benefit from the fines. And in fact, I've always found LRAPA to be very kind to folks who make mistakes. Often if folks sign a letter saying, gosh, my bad, I'll never do it again, the fine's waived or dramatically reduced. And I've always felt that, that the LRAPA staff have been very good in that regard. Some of the other fines are asbestos, which are the big fines. So if somebody does a project without, checking and, they basically get a fine on top of what it would have cost them to do it anyway. So those tend to be very, very large fines. And we've had some appeals over the years. But like I said, I was kind of a skeptic when I joined LRAPA, and I'm absolutely a solid supporter. By maintaining our air quality, we're actually allowing business to continue to thrive because we're keeping our health safe by keeping our air quality good while allowing these permitted organizations to do the business that they need to do. And I think it's just a win-win all the way around, and I'm fully in support of the agency.
Mayor Salisbury and Councilor Fleck, that's a good point that you make, because to maintain attainment with the national ambient air quality standards helps with economic drivers in the localities to be able to attract business. If you were in non-attainment, the permits would be a lot stricter, making it harder to have industry locate here.
And the air quality controls that are in place are really incredible. It's actually quite a science that I don't claim to understand, but I'm very impressed with their ability to maintain our air quality.
Thank you for your presentation. And I just had one more question. And so you said that all the fines go to Lane County, correct? And that just to the general fund, or is it assigned to?
Mayor, it does go to their general fund. What happens to it after that, you'd have to ask Lane County.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be glad to come back any other time you need me to come back.
Appreciate it. Moving on to item B, Memorandum of Agreement with Cottage Grove Police Guild, staff report by Mr. Myers.
At the previous council meeting, the city council discussed the possible memorandum of agreement or proposal to take before the police guild regarding compensation for lateral hires. These would be the officers that are certified police officers from the state but aren't with us right now, and hiring somebody that's certified rather than having to hire a new recruit that would go through the academy and essentially be a trainee for about a year. Hiring a lateral, we get somebody who's an officer that can come on the street right away and be full-fledged as an officer. What's going on around the state is a lot of jurisdictions are offering a signing bonus to try to attract those laterals, to bring them into the community. We presented that after the discussion of the council. We presented the proposal to the guild, and the $6,000 signing bonus with $3,000 up front and $3,000 after they've served a year on the staff was approved by the guild, with the addition and the item that we brought up to, because they did want to negotiate or bargain this as an essential bargaining item that you have to mandatorily bargain because it's a change in compensation, is to have a loyalty bonus, essentially a bonus for existing officers that have helped and stayed on and are making the changes in the department that we need, for them to have that, and then also be able to have a bonus if they recruit a lateral that signs up and actually gets sworn in. The Guild has approved that memorandum, and you have a signed copy from the Guild. Now it's for the council to officially ratify and approve the memorandum of understanding with the Police Guild.
Councillor Flack.
Well, I want to thank City Manager. I have been mentioning that I'm very concerned that the wages that our city is able to pay are not, they're comparable with cities our size, but of course we're very close to large jurisdictions with deeper pockets. And so I'm really encouraged that we're also offering some, benefit as a loyalty to the folks who've really made an effort to keep our department running. Right now, we're very shorthanded, and they are just working themselves very, very hard. So I really appreciate their efforts, and I'm glad that this is in there. And with that, I will move that the City Council approve the attached memorandum of understanding between the City of Cottage Grove and the Cottage Grove Police Guild.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Item C, modification of police chief salary range. Staff report by Mr. Myers.
So, Mayor and Council, at the previous council meeting, we also talked about the recruitment process for the police chief. And as Councillor Fleck has mentioned, we do compete with not only jurisdictions our size, but with Roseburg, Corvallis, Albany, other jurisdictions, and trying to recruit the professional and level of qualified police chief candidates that we can. We need to compete with those. We've done a salary survey that we talked about last week with 17 other cities throughout the state. Our own jurisdiction comparables, about the same population as us, as well as a number of higher population cities. Included in the original study was Eugene and Baker City. Eugene was, of course, higher than everybody. We pulled that out. Baker City was remarkably lower than everyone. We pulled those out, and it didn't change much, but we got the two high and lows out. Based on that, we looked at how that compared to our total compensation, and it was about $2,000 lower than the market average from those other jurisdictions. And if you looked at just the salary portion, we were still about $2,000 there. And so some cities were lower than us in salary, but they had significantly higher benefits packages that brought them up, or they were higher in salaries and their benefit package was lower. And so we focused just on the salary range. We have a salary range sheet that you have in your packet that the city has adopted for all of the compensation for all of the different classes of employees throughout the city. The different colors represent different bargaining units. The police chief is in the non-represented group that has no unit that represents them. The first sheet is the final amount of, well, the first sheet is actually the proposed change for the police chief. The back sheet on your packet is the current salary range and salary schedule steps and ranges for all the positions. We're proposing, as a result of the discussions last meeting, to increase the bottom step, step A in the police chief's range, by $1,600 a month, which then puts them in the range with the market on the market study. And then those steps are then 5% increments up to the top step. So that increases from 8,254 on the bottom to 9,854, with the top step increasing from 10,534 to 12,576. That puts us about $2 less, I believe, than the market average. If I remember right, where were we? For the max. The what that does, the market average, it actually puts us just a little bit above the market average, about that is 12,498. So we're just a little bit above on the salary piece. We have some pretty good benefits, and so it does keep us up with others, the other cities as well. So you have before you a proposal to make this change. More than likely, and this is unless barring we get some wonderful rock star that applies right away and passes all the backgrounds and goes through all the interviews process and everything, that we will put the recruitment information out. We'll start putting that together. That'll go out probably in a month or so, and then we'll start that recruitment process. If we do recruit a new chief, they probably won't start before July 1. And so this salary and impact will actually be in next year's budget rather than this year's budget. The officers on the police chief will also start towards the bottom of the range. We generally don't start at the top. It's depending on qualifications. If we get somebody that is really good, has great qualifications, they may start on B or C, but we try to keep them on the lower portion of that range, and then they have some space to move up over the years.
Councillor Flack.
Madam Mayor, I move that the City Council approve the modifications of the City of Cottage Grove's salary schedule to increase the police chief's salary range 36 by increasing step A by $1,600. The remaining steps would continue the 5% step differential.
Second. We've got a motion with a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, discussion.
Yeah, I'm in favor of this. I guess I would like to hear more. If we're doing a lot of increases, which we have to, we're in this position where in order to attract staff, we need them soon because we have shortages. But, you know, I know we can't. Can you give us a temperature test or a kind of a order of magnitude? What are we doing to the budget with these increases? How soon? How much are we is the plan to pull from contingency for a while? Is the tax base going to catch up? Like, can you give us a feel for the impact?
Well, right now with where we're at, we're about where we're supposed to be. So we're not having a problem, and that's one of the issues why, you know, starting this would be in next year's budget, because the new chief wouldn't start until after July 1. We've got some savings because we've had some positions that are empty. We have some other expenses. I mean, the body cams, some of the other things that we've been doing are costing us money. We're watching that, but if we need to, as we get closer to the end of the year, we'll do a contingency transfer in from the general fund contingency. But right now, we're okay. We're not overexpending the police department budget.
And from the presentation from before, there was where we would be, but where we would hope to be, and I took that to be there's more positions. Maybe you could explain that. Are there more positions that we hope to have, but we're not actually filling that's budgeted, or if we were fully staffed, are we still okay?
And by the time we get fully staffed, that's where we'll have to look at the question, depending on where we put people on the ranges and everything. But right now, we are trying to fill all those positions that we have in the budget to get it fully staffed. We have next council meeting, we'll have one of our laterals that's been kind of waiting for the approval of the memorandum, who has said he's going to sign on. He will be coming in to be sworn in at the next meeting and the council meeting. So we'll have one new lateral. We're hoping for at least one other new lateral, which would be spectacular. And then we'll start doing some recruiting for recruits, which we are doing currently as well. We do have some leads on some good captain candidates. So far, they're good. As we go through the process, we have the space to do 2 captains. We may look at doing 2 captains and not having a dispatch supervisor or doing some other changes in the department. But we're trying to do everything within the realm of what positions we have and try to get those filled.
Last thought, is this all with the intent of keeping the jail in operation or not? Is that
Right now the jail's closed, and we're trying to do this and get dispatch up and running with a new facility. We've got some grant money coming in. We're moving it from where it's at in the building. We're trying to concentrate on those things right now. The jail reopening and the improvements that need to be made there are probably a much larger and bigger discussion that we'll be bringing back to you later. There are some real issues that we may need to face, and we're waiting for final assessment. We had another assessment done by CIS did one earlier, but we had another assessment done by Elmer Dickinson, who was the former DA up in Washington County.
Yes.
Yeah. And so he's actually working with the Sheriff's Association in doing a detailed assessment on what might need to be done to the jail. We are looking at exploring other options for jail opportunities too, some partnerships with other agencies. So.
Mr. Myers, fully staffed, we're looking at 15 to 18?
Yeah. I think it's 18 sworn and then the 6 dispatchers, I think. I have to grab it, but yeah, you're right in the order there.
All right.
Yeah.
Councilor Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. In general, I'd rather see a salary increase like this in the context of the full budget, as well as looking at all the non-represented staff. But it's my understanding we're doing this now ahead of the budget process because we need to start recruiting now so that we can have someone ideally starting within the next fiscal year. So I appreciate this, but also with the caveat that we'll be analyzing this within the context of our full budget during the budget process.
Right. And for your information, we're also conducting the same 17-city survey for all the other non-represented department head staff to verify those and make sure those are all in line as well. And that will be a part of the 23-24 budget.
Anyone else? No. We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Report from the city manager.
So I have our first quarterly report from Carry It Forward, as well as we've also pulled in other numbers that we think you might be interested in, or successes or issues or failures that we've been having in other areas in handling homelessness. They have currently the shelter site has 30 shelters that are being used. We have 33 shelters out there, but 3 of them are being used for storage and for equipment for doing the remodeling on the building. And so part of the remodeling includes not only the 3 restrooms and a conference room, but also a large closet storage area for them in the building. So a lot of their stuff is stored there or in the other conference room, meeting room that they have. So that's been kind of a limitation for Carry It Forward in that the space isn't all done yet. We were experiencing the same kind of supply chain issues with the shower stalls, the roll-in shower stalls for the restrooms. They didn't come. We ordered them, and it took 8 months, 9 months for them to get here, or longer. They finally came. We're almost done. We've actually painted the walls. Flooring is getting put in, but not yet.
Today and tomorrow.
Today and tomorrow. So that's where we're at on the construction. Carry It Forward is really excited because they have some things they've got excited to get started, but they just can't because they don't have the space yet with the conference room. Of those 30 units, they've had 36 individuals over the course of this last quarter that have been housed. 20 of them male, 13 female, 1 transgender, 1 single gender, and 1 questioning. Their ages range in 18 to 30. There were 7 individuals. There's 15 individuals that are 31 to 50, 9 individuals that are 51 to 61, and 5 individuals that are 62 plus. So pretty good range that go up into the higher ages. Currently, there are 29 guests at the facility. They're interviewing 1 more. They haven't been vetted completely yet, but they're interviewing 1 more to occupy. They have 150 case management sessions. They've had 150 case management sessions with Carry It Forward team that have been focused on housing wait lists, conducting front door assessments, reaching out to medical providers, getting them their ID from the state, writing letters for reference, doing that kind of work. They spend about 10 hours a week providing help on forms and how to move them forward in their goals. They've also had a number of individuals that have moved out of the program here. 1 person exited from here to go to Eugene to stay with their daughter, and is seeking diversion funding to help stay with their daughter, which will hopefully be permanent housing. They've had 4 people that have exited and transferred to facilities in Eugene run by Carry It Forward that actually are a 12-month program, so they're getting them into a program to help them and get them moving towards housing navigation. 1 person left the camp to go be housed with a local family. They fell into some unsheltered status because they couldn't quite get a hold of some of their behavioral issues. They re-entered the camp and they were there for about a week, and they've gone back to the family now. So hopefully some of those issues have been resolved, or they've taken care of how to get that taken care of. 1 person was transferred to a Eugene shelter and then was brought back because of behavioral issues as well. They have about 6 weeks of 6 hours a week of counseling provided by Jennifer Ferez. She was here earlier. She's worked with about 10 people on the site, getting to know them, drop-in stuff, doing interviews, and doing counseling with them. This is one of those programs that when they get the counseling conference room rebuilt or finished, that'll be able to be enhanced a little more. In addition to that, they've had a number of members, individuals there that have entered programs. 1 person entered a substance abuse beginning recovery program when they got there. She's been receiving ongoing support to maintain sobriety. 2 people are traveling to Eugene daily to use, and they're using RideSource for a drug treatment program in Eugene. Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, they're kind of waiting. They can't get in and have a space to use yet. The 1 room that's got stuff stored in it's too small. They need the other room. So they're waiting to get in once the building's done. And South Wing Mental Health is also looking forward to expanding some of their peer support there on the site when they get the other conference room, the other meeting space to be able to use. They haven't really had any opportunity to get the vocational programs running because of the weather. They've been working with Square One Villages and trying to get that squared away. Once the weather gets going, they'll be worked into their construction program that they have there, and moving that way. They haven't had they've had 14 clients of the total that have started the process to get their food handler's card. So that's part of one of the pieces of their vocational training. And so 14 of them are moving towards that direction. 28 have expressed an interest in getting library cards. And then they've been starting a discussion with the LCC to get on the Pathways program so that they can get some LCC programs coming in there. That's another one of those that's kind of waiting for that room as well, but they've started those discussions to get them going. Volunteerism is pretty big, and one of the reasons it's big is they've had a number of their residents help with the shower that's on the site. The portable shower is there, and it's open on Wednesdays for people from outside the camp to come in, and so they've been helping clean that and take care of that, as well as doing other projects around the site. They've estimated about 800 hours, and they're trying not to count the hours of where they clean up their own space because they're supposed to do that. This is doing other things in the camp, or helping with food, or helping in the kitchen, or doing things that way. So that's where that's at. They've had 24/7 coverage with 1 to 2 people on at all times in the quarter. 18 hours a day, they have an active manager oversight on the site with those individuals. Then for 6 hours of the day, they have an emergency manager person, staff manager on site or on video conference, or being able to watch through the cameras. They have 20 hours of basic case management going on every day, and 15 hours of that is a one-on-one type project that they work on. 10 hours of other complex case management that's being donated by others to help with that. Their staff is spending about 2 to 4 hours right now helping with preparing food in the kitchen. So as more of the staff members start getting their food handlers cards, they can reduce that of staff time. But right now the staff is doing that a lot. They've started some medical services are there. They have visits from medical professionals come to the site. In December, they had 4 people had patient visits with the medical personnel. At the 99 site, there were 8. That was on December 4th when they came. On December 21st, they had 13 patients over at the 12th Street site the overflow site behind Dairy Mart. On January 8th, they had 5 patients at the 99 site and 3 patients that were visited by medical professionals at the 12th Street site. On March 5th, the most recent visit to the medical professionals, they had 1 patient at the 99 site, 7 at the Dairy Mart site behind Dairy Mart, and 1 patient that was visited and checked in with at the North Douglas site. So not only are they providing those services at the 99 site, but they're actually expanding some of those into the other facilities as well. Currently, there are at the 12th Street site, we have 34 tents today. Those are living and garage tents. We don't know how many of those are actually sleeping tents, but many of them, we give them a 10 by 15 space, and many of them will put 2 tents up. One will be stuff, and the other one is where they sleep, so that they have room to sleep and can stay warm without having all their stuff piled on them. At the Douglas site, there are 12 tents. And again, living in garage tents. There are 28 open sites still at Douglas and 2 open sites at the 12th Street site. Over this last quarter, we have had a total of 9 RVs towed and impounded. 3 of them were towed by tailors earlier in the quarter. 6 of them were towed by tailors and dropped off at our site at the sewer plant. Currently, because of the volume and the size of the units, tailors have said, hey, we can tow them for you, and they're not charging us to tow them, but we can't put them on our site. We just need our space. They're too much. They take up too much room, but we'll do the paperwork for you, because getting the possession of the titles to be demolished takes work. They're doing all that. They're just towing them and storing them on our site at the sewer treatment plant. We have it secured, locked, camera lights, monitoring that. And then they have 3 that they towed to their site. Currently, of those 9, we have demolished 4 on our site. We just finished those 4 recently. We got the demolished title, went through the whole process, and had them checked, inspected for asbestos and other things, and had 4 of them demolished. We have 1 more that we now have in city ownership. We've gone through the paperwork portion, and 1 more that still has not had all the time elapsed yet. The one that has all the time elapsed, the owner of that, alleged owner of that unit, she hasn't quite proved to us yet. We've got her information, and since we now own it, we will go into the RV and verify that some of the things will have her name on it. And if it has her name, then we can verify that's hers, and we'll try to get some of her possessions back to her. More than likely, she won't get the RV back. Some of these RVs were not people staying in them. They were moving around. One RV was one that was impounded while it was in motion on the street. It could not stay in its lane. The rims on the tires were so bent. The treads on the tires had separated. It kept waddling around, and that's probably a good way to describe it, and couldn't stay in its lane, and was pulled over and was deemed unsafe to be driven. Also didn't have license and registration, and so it was impounded, and that one has been demolished as one of those 4. Taylor's is demolished. They're 3, and basically those were $1,500 each. Ours ranged from about $500 to $2,500, so of those 4 that we've had. So that's that piece. Carry It Forward's also working. They have an arrangement with ACT, and I'm not sure what ACT stands for anymore. I can't remember. It's not Area Commission on Transportation. That's a different act. And they have 1 space reserved for them for their clients if they have a client in the community that needs a cool down, calm down place to go to and get stabilized so that they can then begin their steps into mental health, and then they take them out and move them into the other facility. They've been working with community sharing and other groups on the showers. They've been working, community sharing is bringing some food. They brought food for the holidays. There's another local provider that's bringing weekly food drops from the mission. ARC and Escado Latino Food Pantry they're bringing bi-monthly food allotments in, and they're working with them. Several of the patients have peer support from South Lane Mental Health and some other private providers, and they're working that way. ODI's RARE program, and he defined what RARE was in here, but their program, they've been delayed because they're having some hiring problems, but they're also waiting for the space to open for conferences. They've had the Occupy Medical has been there on a monthly basis, and they've been aiding in residents who have had surgery recently. And they've had 2 clients that have had surgery and are recovering from surgeries, and they've been working with them and making sure they stay safe. The Alliance, the HIV Alliance, has offered housing support, and they're working with them. Trillium has been funding some builds that are going on through the vocational program, and so they'll be a part of some of the things here. They've been working with LTD to try to explore some passes. Peace Health, Southland Fire, and the Humane Society have been doing some work. Humane Society is kind of interesting because they've been coming on site and helping residents understand and how to keep their pets from being more pets, and taking care of and getting some of the puppies and things that were unexpectedly born out of there and back into proper places and homes and taking care of that. At least half of the residents that are currently there have been placed on housing lists. And the housing lists, wait lists are for Cottage Grove, Veneta, Junction City, Eugene, and Springfield. So they're not just waiting for Cottage Grove locations for housing. A dozen of the residents have started their forms and started their work to get their ID from DMV. 2 people have signed up for Home for Good to start their case management to get into Homes for Good, to get into permanent housing with Homes for Good. 3 are getting help in applying for disability payments. They just don't have a place. They don't have anywhere to go. And so they've just neglected that. 3 are actually in the process of getting their disability actually taken care of and getting on that, where they'll then have some additional revenue coming in to be able to find permanent housing if they can get on a wait list. They've had... and Whitebird's been helping with that a little bit. There's been a dozen that have been working on getting assistance in utilizing their community, their coordinated care, their CCO, Medicaid benefits, and getting that going. 2 individuals have been working and getting staff involved in case management on getting a bank account. You know, what's the benefit of using a bank account for your Social Security benefits and getting that established rather than having stuff they can lose all over the place. 6 of the individuals have pets, and they've signed their agreements to have responsible pets, which includes making sure that they don't have puppies. They've had a winter dinner on the site where the camp volunteers volunteered and helped provide about and feed 80% of the rest of the camp and everything as well. They've done front door assessments for 6 people so far, and trying to get them on the permanent housing list and going that way. 4 of the clients have participated in some of their criminal justice process to get things taken care of that they have on their records. 7 of them have adjusted their incarceration. They've been adjusting to incarceration or to camp life from incarceration, with 5 maintaining behaviors that allow them to participate in the program. So no violent crime has occurred out there at the Highway 99 site. They've had 1 overdose. It was a non-fatal overdose. They've had guests that have exited for breaking the rules. They've had 3 that were transferred to Eugene, and 1 person this week that's mulling over the offer to leave. That, hey, you're not fitting in here, you're not following along. 4 have exited on their own accord and without a required exit. 5 have exited because of their behavior, and 3 of those have moved to try to work on some programs in other places to be able to get back into something. So that's kind of a report of everything that's going on. I think we're seeing some success. We don't have facilities, camping going on our other public lands. We have heard reports that there's some camping going on the Spirit Trail, and we will be visiting with the school district to find out what they're doing, and helping them, since they're a public body, going through a process to where they can help coordinate with us and get those people moved off the Spirit Trail into one of the designated camping locations, so that site can be safe again for people to use.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. I requested this, and I would love it if we could get a report quarterly.
Yeah, they have a
I think
quarterly
it's really
report
helpful
requirement. So, yeah.
for us. And I have a couple of questions. You said that half of the people are on wait lists, and is that just the Carry It Forward?
Yes, just the Carry It Forward,
Okay.
yeah.
And then I've a question about guests. Are they allowed to stay overnight, or do they have to leave at a certain time?
And some of the residents at the site are not allowed to have guests. And it just depends on where they're at and what's going on. And some of them have requested that they don't want guests. And we have one family member who's very upset that her daughter's on the site, but the daughter has said, no, I do not want my mother coming in. Her mother's also homeless, and I think she's actually a trigger. And that's why it's working better for her daughter not to have that contact. So,
any questions? Councilor Black? Councilor
Thank you,
Durham?
Mayor. Mr. Myers, I appreciate that overview and that really detailed update. I had the opportunity to visit the site with Councilor Mary Day a while back, and I will say being able to see that Grovers have a space to be with dignity is really heartwarming, especially when you see the level of disabilities for the people who are living there and still having to, say, roll in their wheelchair over gravel. It's heartwarming, and I appreciate the investment that the city has made to provide a place for people to get back on their feet, to navigate with the assistance of outside help, all the complexity of getting into housing or accessing your benefits, even if you are very clearly disabled. Applying for Social Security disability is a process that no person with a disability could do on their own. So I appreciate this update very much. Thank you, Mayor, for asking for it.
Anyone else? Councilor Black?
Yeah, and I actually also was asking for this. I really appreciate the comments because, I work with the unhoused as well. And so, I had a client come to me who was one of the 86th individuals and asking if there was an appeals process. And I guess, for me at my agency, if somebody is violent, that is, kind of an automatic, you're going to take a break. But I try to never make this punitive, but corrective. And so I'm hoping that that is the case with these folks as well. And I'm also hearing that the ability to enter into like detox services, alcohol and drug, diversion programs is on an acuity level. And I'm hoping once that the open space is available that, folks on the lower acuities will also receive those services. So I'm really generally supportive as a whole, but I just want to make sure that there are also kind of some checks and balances in place. I know that my organization, as the county that oversees us, and they periodically check in to see, am I doing what I say I'm going to under the contract? And I guess I would hope that we're doing the same things with them. And those are kind of some of my comments that I've mentioned as well. And I'm really looking forward to the next report.
Anyone else? Councilor Savage?
Thank you so much, Mayor. I just had a question. You said there were 29 guests there currently with one interviewing to come in. Is it an automatic pull from the site off of Main Street, or are there other people? How do they pick? How do they get the people?
It's not necessarily automatic, but they, for lack of a better comparison, they are using the 12th Street site and the Douglas site as a minor league camp. So they are working with some people there and getting some of the initial interviews and stuff there where they're putting some of those on the list to fill in on the 99 site. So it is that way. But occasionally we may get a senior that's disabled and that comes in that just recently got made homeless or has been homeless for a while that just got found, that might jump in front. So if they meet some of those criteria, senior, veteran, disability, and the next one on the list doesn't have that, they might get skipped briefly.
Thank you so much. And there was something that I saw at a site in Salem that had quite a bit of rocks all around. And they had, it's almost like these little click-clack puzzle pieces that allowed folks in wheelchairs and walkers to navigate over the gravel, which really you sink into, and it's really problematic. And having so many folks with disabilities on our site, I know that we'd kind of talked about it previously. Is there thought about getting something to help assist folks in wheeled devices?
What we have on the site right now is we have our 3/4 minus that's there, but we also put fines on it, and we need to come back and put more fines on. But the fines then are compacted, and we pack those down with our compactor, and it's almost like concrete when we do it. So we don't need the pads like they did in Salem where they had loose gravel. It's just the weather has settled some of that. We need to come in with a little bit more fines and get that pounded down, and we'll have a tight concrete surface. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll continue. I have more. The If I Were Mayor contest ends tomorrow. Tomorrow is the deadline. We have currently an application, an entry for video. We have an entry for essay, and we have an entry for the poster contest. So if youth haven't prepared or working on it already, it's probably too late to do it tonight. Maybe not. I guess they could stay up all night and do it. But that is, so you will have some to judge for the next council meeting where we'll review those. As was mentioned, we have the Yak Academy on Friday, so you are invited to lunch. Come ready to talk and visit with the youth for about 45 minutes before we whisk them off to go to the sewer plant or water plant or other fun things after lunch. We're planning an open house at the community center April 27th from 3:30 to 6:30. We're going to be inviting the community to come out. All of the organizations that are now in the community center will be participating and showing off what they're doing and what their spaces become. South Valley Athletics, the Genealogical Library, Senior Disability Services and their Cafe 60 program and the Senior Center will all be participating in, and the library will too, but those will be participating in kind of sharing what they're doing and what they're looking forward to with the facility now in the way that it is. So, and plus we want to show off the remodeling that was done and the new roof. We won't take them up and show them the roof, but we'll just say, hey, look, it's not raining in here. So that'll be the good thing. I want to commend and congratulate the city and our Public Works Department and staff in planning for the LCOG Award of Excellence in Economic Development. Congratulations for receiving that last week at the LCOG dinner. That was exciting and a great recognition for the Main Street project and the improvements that that's going to be bringing to the community. I'd also then want to highlight as a question regarding weatherization. Our housing rehab program for Cottage Grove has $180,000 in it. So there is money, and weatherization is a viable thing to do, and it's for low-income households. It is a loan, but it's a loan that you don't ever have to pay back until you sell the property or transfer or leave the property. And so it's a low interest, 3%. Encourage anybody who wants to know more about it to get a hold of staff, and we'll get you in touch with. And if you look in the Friday update, I believe we have the information to get a hold of Andy, to apply for that. Great program, and a number of people have taken advantage of it, but it's kind of stalled. And so anybody who has those weatherization needs, this would be a great program to take advantage of. And if we use the 180, there may be some funding that we'd have to get some grants applied through the housing rehab program that maybe they could get some more funding available for the community. But let's get the 180 used up.
That's a Woodard grant?
No.
Woodard, no.
No, the 180,000 are old housing rehab loans, federal money from CDBG that have to recirculate in. Once they get paid back, they get put back into our pocket of money that St. Vincent de Paul is administering for us. And so it's money that's kind of set aside there for us through the CDBG program, the old grants, and kind of recycles through. So if they do want to expand the program and get more funding from CDBG grants, the community development block grants from the federal government, we need to get rid of the 180. So that's.
Councilor Urban.
Can you speak to the picking back up the tours that got halted by a big global thing that happened.
Yeah, we're hoping to get those started. The weather's not really great right now, but if we can get them started later this fall. One of the issues we have is we're drastically understaffed at the wastewater treatment plant. So that's one of the pieces we'd like to get kind of squared away. We're recruiting and trying to find somebody. So hopefully spring, summer, we can get that going again and get moving forward there.
Anyone else? Councilor Merryday.
On the If I Were Mayor contest, what is the hour deadline?
5 o'clock tomorrow.
5 o'clock. Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, we have no
We will be here waiting at 5 o'clock.
city attorney, so this meeting is adjourned.